session so that the video is available at a later
Yeah.
stage. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I think we have more than 50 people, 54 at the moment, logged in to listen to Dr. Sumit Dhukia, who's a familiar, face, at least for all of us birders here in Delhi. I've had the privilege of knowing him for more than almost 15 years, I guess, at least more than 10 years.
Good.
Working together on many occasions. And he works in the faculty of Guru Gobind Singh University here in Delhi. And of course, one good thing about, Dr. Sumit Dhukia is that, he has inspired a generation of young people into birding. Okay, so every year when we have the bird count or the bird race or any other, planned, organized birding activity around Delhi, there is always a team, and mostly this team consists of these young, enthusiasts and birders who've really been inspired by, Sumit himself. So Sumit, thank you so much. I think that's the most wonderful job that you're doing. In fact, Rohit from one of your students,
yes, Rohit
added
is
a new species to the Delhi bird list as well. There was a sandpiper, buff-breasted sandpiper,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
After 137 years.
Yeah. So from Najafgarh. So one of his students, he posted an image of a buff-breasted sandpiper, I think, which was the first ever record for Delhi. So I think that's the biggest contribution, Sumit, that you made to the bird watching community of Delhi. But going beyond that, I think in your professional career, I know you hail from Rajasthan, and you worked. You've done your, studies from Rajasthan, and of course, much of your work is also centered around Rajasthan. And of course, this work is predominantly to do with habitats which are increasingly under a lot of threat. These are the grassland habitats. And I think the two iconic species of the grassland habitats is the blackbird and the great Indian bustard. And Dr. Sumit, you really worked with both these species over the last 15 years of your professional career. And more importantly, since these species cohabit very closely with the local populations, so you try to involve and engage the local communities into protecting both these species. So, I think that's the contribution that we're looking forward to hear this evening as well. But all of us recognize that if we protect blackbuck, a grassland iconic species or a flagship species of the grasslands, a lot of other species will get protected as well. And similarly, if you protect great Indian bustard, it can have a impact on many other species which are predominantly dependent on the grassland. It could be a lesser florican, for example, which is also one of the endangered species of the grassland of this part of the country. And of course, then there is, Strelitschka's bush chat, which is also, under conservation interest. So, I really appreciate the work because most of us look at grassland as habitats which possibly are lying unutilized. It's always easy to look at a stretch of open ground and figure out what could be the economic potential of that particular site, whether through agriculture or through any other form of development. So protecting grasslands habitats, I think, is very difficult in this country. You can always protect the forests, you can always protect a lot of other habitats, but grassland habitats which are actually around, they come under a lot of population pressure. And of course, and they seemingly, seem as wastelands. Is very, very difficult, to sell the concept of protecting, grassland habitats. And of course, only if we protect these grassland habitats, we can protect, these species like blackbuck and Indian bustard and many other species as well. Great, Sumit, for joining us this evening and offering to kind of walk us through, some of the work that you've done with the communities in Rajasthan, both for blackbuck and the Indian bustard. I know the principal focus this evening will be on the Indian bustard. I guess most of us are birders. So otherwise, I just want to, before I hand over the mic to you, Sumit, I just want to, give tell a bit about the logistics of conducting this presentation. I will put everyone on the mute after I finish, and except Dr. Sumit. So you, and you, of course, Dr. Sumit will do your screen share and, walk us through the presentation. We will save all our question answers towards the end. And what I suggest is there is a chat box right off your screen. So you may like to use the chat box to plug in your questions.
Good.
And plug in your questions so that and what I'll do is I'll pick up those questions and put it across to Dr. Sumit towards the end of the talk, because I know that there'll be a lot of duplication in the questions as well. But then at some point of time, there's a raise hand function which is also available. In case you would like to put your question directly to Dr. Sumit, please feel free to do that as well. And please raise your hand and I will unmute you so that you can convey your, whatever your thoughts and your queries directly to Sumit as well. So that's for the logistics bit of it. Dr. Sumit, over to you, and we look forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaur sir.
Just give me a minute, Sumit. I'll just mute everybody and then you unmute yourself. I'll unmute you.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Okay. Give me a minute. I'll just unmute you. Okay. Yes, Dr. Sumit. Yeah, you're okay.
So, good evening all. And thank you, Kaur sir, for giving me an opportunity to speak about a bird and a work which I am doing since last many years, and in very unstructured manner, and trying to connect many dots in between the landscape, and trying to achieve something with the communities in a in situ conservation manner. So I am faculty here in Guru Gobind Singh University, Delhi, Dwarka, since last around 10 years, and related to GIB, my journey starts around 2000, when I was in 1999, when I was a MSc student, and one day Dr. Ramani came for a small presentation to our university. And that day I was very much able to listen him, and got a interestingly connection to do something on this bird, since being a resident of Rajasthan, and this is a state bird of Rajasthan. So I tried myself to do something for this species, and I searched for some opportunities where I can get myself as a registered for PhD on this bird, but I was unable to do this. So I did my PhD on Chinkara, that is again from the same landscape. And during my this work, I came in contact with various local communities. And interesting thing in Western Rajasthan is that this is a landscape where you will find almost all the species of wildlife outside the protected area, whereas very less population of these species in the protected area. And only 2 protected areas are there so far notified by Government of India and Government of Rajasthan. One is Desert National Park, which is still a wildlife sanctuary in government records, and another is Tal Chapar Sanctuary, which is a very small sanctuary in Churu district. Rest other is completely open, a kind of a, you can say, a large community dominated landscape, where major part is still westland or barren land, which comes under various type of orans, gochars, or village common lands, and people used to graze their sheep, goat, camel, and other livestock species in that area. And in between these grazing lands and agricultural lands and community lands, all the species used to survive, thrive very well, and they have some kind of association with the local communities, which I believe that this is a unique in entire world, where you are finding various species outside the protected area around their houses, and you can easily see them, easily recognize them, and they are also very much comfortable with these surrounding areas. So I started, after my PhD in 2002, I started my another journey with the Zoological Survey of India, and that journey gave me an opportunity to survey entire Thar Desert, from Ganganagar, Hanumangarh to part of the Shiroi district. So all the Western Rajasthan districts I surveyed very well, and during that time it gave me an interesting opportunity to assess various species. Then in between 2001 and 2, I got one opportunity to visit. Being a local, I have been given an opportunity by Dr. Ramani to assist him in few of the campaigns as a community translator or a kind of a community connection in between the science and the local. And I used that opportunity again very well and learned a lot with Dr. Rahmani in various week-long surveys. And we also traveled on foot for various kilometers in between the villages and done various type of systematic survey on Great Indian Bustard as well as Hobara Bustard, which is now known as McMinn's Bustard. So all these opportunities I was like using here and there and trying to connect myself with the species. Then seriously, I started working on this species since 2006 when I got a small opportunity from Oriental Bird Club UK to do some kind of survey in 3 districts of Western Assam. And that was based on a kind of a long survey and species documentation. Then I got another opportunity in 2010 from Oriental Bird Club UK again. And basically that is purely for Great Indian Bustard and current status of Great Indian Bustard in 2010. So you can find few of these reports online also, and even on ResearchGate and other platform of my this CV. And since this species is having a status from vulnerable to critical, vulnerable to endangered, endangered to critically endangered, and slowly the population started declining. And I must say, like it's in one remote corner of a country where one species is constantly decreasing, or you can say it's a kind of like weeping in a corner, and nobody was paying attention. Though BNHS, Bombay Nature Research Society, did great surveys, but around 2010 to 2006 to 2010 or 12, there was no much attention paid by any government of India or government of Rajasthan or any research organization. Then in 2013, State Forest Department of Rajasthan, State Government of Rajasthan launched an interesting project, Project Bustard, and that was one of the dream of Dr. Rahmani to have a specific project on bustard. So various government reports and surveys came from that 2013 onwards. But my connection was in an interesting way in between these projects. So I started working with connecting these landscapes, and I constantly started reading all these reports. And in all the reports, I used to read that locals are against the GIB conservation. And being a local, it hurts a lot that why these communities are not in a support of conservation, where we are reading that species conservation and the landscape and the iconic key and flagship keystone species, flagship species is going to benefit the ecosystem and environment. So what I understood is that there is a gap in between the communication and the scientific community, communication with the communities as well as the scientific community. So I tried a bit in these all 11, 12 years to bridge this gap and try to understand what they are writing in the reports and what the locals are understanding from these reports or from the government policies. So I'm just showing few of the photographs where this Great Indian Bustard used to live. I think all of you know very well about this landscape because many of you are birders and you have been done excellent birding in these areas. So you can see the landscape is having a kind of a plains, then scrubland, and then sandy plains and shifting plains and other. So we have in desert, we have various type of small habitats, and all of these are like in a mosaic condition where agriculture fields will be there. Then you can see that there are some boundaries. So these are the agriculture fields, and beyond that there is a light brown part is a shifting sand dune. Then these are the some kind of we usually call in the local language magra. So it's kind of a scrub gravelly plain, and then this is a plain scrub plain. So this species is a iconic species of this landscape, which is a typical. It needs a typical savanna kind of grassland where less number of trees and more number of grassland is required. And the typical demand of this species is that the grass height should be up to the eye of an individual. So if the grass grows above the height of this bird, you will never find this bird in that grassland. So that is a critical point where grassland policy need to be managed, and Desert National Park authorities are trying their best to manage this type of policy, and they used to cut certain areas of this grassland and they never allow to grow above the eye of this species. Now this is again like from the typical, and why I am showing all these photographs are from outside the protected area. This is from again from outside the protected area, and this is like iconic photograph. John Verghese taken this photograph in Desert National Park area, which is having both the state animal and state bird together. And you can imagine, you can see the height of this bird is close to the height of this Indian gazelle, which is like around 4 point something feet in the height. And you can again compare with the height of camel. So, and this is in the agriculture field. So we generally have in mind that, like again, I'm quoting from reports that livestock grazing and other areas are having a kind of impact on this species. And in my research and in my this all 8 to 10 years of community feedback and community data, I can say that around 8 to 9 months this species roams in the community dominated landscape, whereas only for breeding purpose this goes into the enclosures. And these enclosures are exclusively protected by Desert National Park authorities, and these are the best place where they are going and breeding. So in management language, Dr. Bhardwaj, who was the CCF in 2013 to 2015-16, he used to say that enclosures of Desert National Parks are used as a maternity ward by these birds, and rest of the year they used to roam outside the national park. So we need an integration from the community. We need a kind of a dialect from the community, because the species is using both the areas. And this is again from Bhanu Singh photograph. You can see all this like short-toed snake eagle to the GIB females to the desert fox to the chinkara. So this is like a species where you will find it used to roam in various areas, and it used to go even inside the kind of scrubland. It is always not going to be in the grassland. So we need a mosaic where a scrubland is there, where agricultural land is there, where a exclusively protected breeding habitats are there. And this is a map I downloaded from IUCN just to give you a glimpse that how much area this species used to occupy in the past. So it used to occupy up to this, and this. So it goes up to the last of the Andhra Pradesh, and now hardly few areas left around Karnataka, in Karnataka, in Telangana. Then a few areas are in Maharashtra, and few areas are in the Madhya Pradesh. But nowadays it's dominatingly found only in few areas of Gujarat, which is like little Run of Kutch. Then only one district of Rajasthan, which is Jaisalmer, and again it's not in the entire Jaisalmer, it's in the part of the Jaisalmer, and 2 to 3 other areas are there in Maharashtra and Karnataka and Telangana. So this is like a journey where you can see in 1988 this species was listed as a threatened, then 1994 endangered, then in 1996. So these are the all assessment years, and from 2011 it has been classified under critically endangered category. And this was the time where Dr. Sushito Datta of WII, and he is now scientist there, he did a extensively PhD work on this species in Greater Run of Kutch, and he came out with various interesting papers, and on the basis of these interesting papers, the assessment has been revised, and from endangered it became a critically endangered. So that was a time where we need to think, and it's like the largest alarm call we can receive from any species, that we have to do something on ground, otherwise we are going to lose this species. And I used to say that this is a species is not going to be lost from country. It is going to be lost from entire world or from the science. So it is going to become a exclusive extinction, and that is if occurred, then it will be in front of our eyes. The population is very, very less, hardly 150 to 160 or 170 individuals. And the last assessment was done in 2018. So we are close to 2.5 years, and we are not having any population assessment data from the government. Now, this is a small statistic chart prepared by various agencies and Corbett Foundation, Sanctuary Asia, and Conservation India campaign. They are using in the campaign. So the last assessment was done in 1969, where 1260 species individuals were reported from all over India. Then in 1978 it was 745. Then in 2001 it was 600. Then 2006 less than 300. Then in 2018 it was 150, and the projection goes like up to 2020 we are going to lose everything. But government acted at least in the last, and they launched various conservation programs, and then in situ program, then ex situ program. So they are doing their excellent service, but I will come in my part. So I started connecting with the community. I started assessing this, and my all this journey is like a kind of a teamwork where I am having various friends and students and volunteers and community people. Some of them are elders, some of them are younger. And in my this 15 year of journey, you can say like a 5-year-old baby who was in the class first or second in the school is now in the graduation class. So I have a long connection of at least 3 generations are interacting with me at that time right now. And it is a kind of a positive sign that I can say like in a 15 year, still I am having a very good connection, and the connection is one by one is growing. So all of them are giving me data, all of them are giving me information, GIB as well as other species. My concentration on GIB is because I am using GIB as a, you can say like a tiger of this landscape, because we need to, it's a kind of a conservation dilemma that tiger is like fund generator. So all the tiger habitats are having very good projects, very good tourism projects, very good visiting photographers and tourists. But these are the areas where such type of species used to found. We are not having anybody to go and spend some time and interact with the locals and do something. So these are from some of the part of the Desert National Park, and this is like from the Miatlar. All these photographs are 4 to 5 or 6 year old. Now all these kids are nowadays like you can add 5 years in the age, so they are in the higher classes, and a few of them are in my contact. Now here you can see one of my good friend is Dr. K.R. Sanecha, Kalu Sanecha, and he is our long time campaigner with working with us, and we used to take opportunities to visit, and we used to start dialogue with the schools, children, then dialogue with the local teachers, and try to communicate with the local communities. And one thing is that being a local of that area, though we are not having 100% language dialect of that area, but it is very interestingly 80 to 90% we can understand, and that is a very interestingly bridge in between the communication. So we targeted small schools, we targeted large schools, because for us audiences are audiences, 1 or 100 or 1,000. We never bothered about the size of the audience. Our purpose in this type of campaign is just to start dialogue with him, and various type of pamphlets and various type of posters were developed in Hindi, then communicated to them, distributed to them, and let them like understand what is the grassland, what is the birds, and what type of ecosystem is there under this canopy of this Great Indian Bustard, and what type of benefits they can get. Then in 2013 onwards, I started working with again with the forest department, and thanks goes to Dr. G.S. Bardwaj. He was at that time CCF Wildlife Jodhpur, and he gave me an opportunity to say, Sumit, why don't you do something? So then I said, sir, what I have to do something? Then he said that you just think and come with me, come again to have a dialogue with me, and kuch apna idea leke aao. Then I came with a idea that sir, we have to again start working with them and the locals, and we have to generate some kind of economic model with them, because otherwise forest department is always seen as a you can say like a barrier in between the communities and the species, and forest department is willing to save the species, but communities are against the conservation model. So I started dialogue with them, and then he said that okay, then we work on a nature guide program. And that program was in 2015, and we selected, Forest Department gave us 25 young 18 to 22 years of age resident of Desert National Park. And some of them are all of you are visited that area, so you must be knowing that around 70 plus villages are officially under the boundary of the Desert National Park. So all these boys were from the that Desert National Park villages. Then I again started, because that was my part, then how to start dialogue with other audiences and how to disseminate my work with the other audiences. So my small team of volunteers, and they started working a few innovative ideas that we can have something on this species with every occasion. So sometimes we used to be called as like a fool, or you can say like it's interesting that why you are doing this type of activities where nobody is going to connect. So what is the connection between a kite and a GIB? But we did our best to communicate the message, and we developed various social media campaign, the slides to them. And this is a photo of Dhananjay Joshi ji from Ahmedabad. And now various interesting problems started coming in the landscape, that number of dogs are increasing. And the number of dogs are increasing in such a way that they are, you can say, like seen as a problem for Great Indian bustard. And this is an iconic photograph where you can see these two dogs are chasing these two GIB female birds. And this is again from the community land. It is not from the Desert National Park area. It is outside the enclosures. This is a photograph from Kutch, where you can see, like you all know, this is one of the major problems, that windmills are always in the grasslands or in the flat plains, and these are the best habitat for GIB. Now in 2013-14 onwards, since this network started building up, and then we came to know about another problem. That another problem was, earlier we used to think that the bird used to get hit by these blades of the windmill. In 2013 onwards, we came to know that the blade of the windmill is very interestingly not going to hit. The problem is in between the windmills and the transmission lines. So these transmission lines were surveyed by various community workers. Here we also contributed from our side through the network. And in last 2.5 years, 4 Great Indian bustards were reportedly found in the under the transmission lines in Pokhran area. So all this one is from Kanoi area by WII team, Wildlife Institute of India team. Then these 3 are from Pokhran area, and our volunteers used to be like first person who used to report, because since this bird is roaming in a larger area, Forest Department is not having that much opportunity and staff to scan daily this area. So these community workers used to inform us, and I used to inform the authorities that there is a GIB, that GIB is under the transmission line, and you just send your staff to go and check it. So this photograph is from Khetulai and Dholia area, and this is one of my best field colleague, Radheshyam Pemani Vishnoi, and he reported 4 GIB deaths from single tail electricity track. Now, in the entire journey of GIB conservation, there is a interestingly very large area has been kept under a protected area category. This is known as a Desert National Park, is a green part. But since 2012-13, the population started moving upwards. Upwards means in the northern direction. And due to various interesting reasons, the population is going further north, and there is no sighting since 2013, there is no sighting of Great Indian bustard in larger part of the Desert National Park. This is another problem where Forest Department was saving a landscape, and the bird started going out, and problem started arising. So how to address this issue where your protected area is there, staff is there, but staff is not going to be do too much where the bird is going to be outside. So here comes a role of, you can say, like in a popular term, we are saying that citizen science project. So this is a community science project where community is reporting, sir, मैंने एक देखा है. then they used to send a information or a social media message, or now thankfully the social media message, WhatsApp message are also having a facility to send a location data. So we used to receive this location data from network as well as the extended part of this community network. Means one person is again having at least 10 to 15 contacts interesting, those are taking interest in the wildlife. So they used to spread this message to our team, and our team used to respond as well as prepare this map. So this map is prepared in last 3 years, and you just see the species congregation is in the some Sudasri and other areas of northern part of Desert National Park. All this red is a windmill area, wind farm. So all this red is a wind farm. Now earlier this species used to roam or migrate from this part to another part, which is a Pokhran or Ramdevra part, that is also having a very large population. So the migration route changed because of the windmill. So there is a obstacle in the migration path. So they started migrating from the upper side of the these windmill parts. And this aeroplane place is Jaisalmer Airport. This is a Jodhpur city. Then there is a Bikaner city. This is a Flodi Air Base. So the species used to migrate from this part to this part round the year, depending upon the seasonality. Like during the breeding time, they congregate here. Another part is here. In between these, there is a huge community owned land, and nobody is having a, like from the forest department, nobody is having a capacity to scan or monitoring in this area. So we started developing this model that how to get information. And that yellow circle is again an interesting part. The light pink is a shape of a inverted C. We used to call, in 2013, there was a paper published by Nigel Collar of IUCN Bustard Specialist Chairperson, Bustard Specialist Group Chairperson, then Dr. G.S. Kardwar, and one more from BNHS. So they named this area as a GIB arc, just like a Tarai arc in the Himalayas. So they named this area as a GIB arc. So the entire focus from 2013 onwards shifted from Desert National Park to this GIB arc, because our target species is moving away from the protected area. So all the in situ, all the management practices are there in the park, but not in the region. The yellow circle is again having interesting information that now in last 1.5 years, at many times species has been reported from this yellow circle part, which is again further extension of GIB arc area. And then at sometime in a year, around 4 to 5 sightings in last 3 years has been reported from Pakistan part. So the species is having a kind of migration from this part to that part, and larger part is in the Pokhran, another part is in the some site. So I used to call in my work, this is a western population and this is a eastern population, and in between these populations is around 150 kilometer distance, and both the areas are having at least 15 to 20 breeding females. Out of 150 adult individuals reported in 2018, around 20 to 25 females in both the landscape. So it's around 80 females are there in this landscape, and that we used to report. Various time males have been reported to observed during the display activity. Now this is I'm telling you about one of that workshop where forest department gave us 25 local youths, and all these 25 local youths were not from like any already in occupation or something like that. They are like well established. They are not some type of well established worker. They were all very normal boys and willing to do something for their earning in the name of Great Indian Bustard Conservation with the forest department. So forest department selected these 25 youths. I am having one red arrow on one particular boy. So you just keep on checking this red arrow, and I will start telling about this boy. So the boy name is Musa Khan. At that time he was around 22 or 21 years of age and unmarried boy, young man. and he was earlier working with local hotels in some. Then he has been selected for this work, and he took interest. But in initial training sessions, he used to sit in the either in the middle or in the last. Then he started moving toward the front side. Then he started moving toward the front row. Then he started again in the front row, and here is Dr. G.S. Bhardwaj, and he is talking with Dr. G.S. Bhardwaj directly. So you can see that confidence building during this process. Forest Department came in very, like you can say, like a very open way. All the Forest Department staff, along with these 25 youths, were mixed for one 2-day session 5 times in a year, and they were having a great interaction in between these Forest Department staff as well as with the officers. And in all the occasions, Dr. G.S. Bhardwaj participated, as well as here is this tall person, one of my good friend, Dr. Anup K.R. He was director at that time. So both these G.S. Bhardwaj Saab and Anup Ji, they started this project, and me along with my various friends, and we all came forward willingly without any remuneration basis. We used to go on CL, or we used to go on holidays to reach up to Jaisalmer and to discuss with these boys. So all this started in August 15, and here Musa Khan is in the front row, and he was later, this is a photograph at that time where he was one of the 25 participants, and he was very much, like you can say, confused state. So मैं क्या करूँगा सर इसमें, मेरे तो कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा. So he started, after that we selected out of these 25, all our contacts were given to them, and they started calling us. So we used to nurture through the mobile, through the phone calls, through our personal visit. And he and 2-3 more showed. This another person is, this is Ursa. He is a gem from that Desert National Park area. So this is Musa Khan, this is Ursa Khan, and both of them together can like take you up to many rare species of this Desert National Park. So Forest Department was having an idea that we are not going to give permission like exclusively like a tiger reserve kind of system. We are not going to permission in all these enclosures. So we said that, sir, you just give us a platform, and there is ample of opportunities outside the enclosures. These boys can go and do birding, and birding is one of the best kind of economic benefit to them. And all these youths started getting interest. So now he is having around 30 to 40 groups in a year. Group vary from 1, like in this case 1 to 5 to 10. And he is now having one own website for online booking and everything. So you can see, like, from this confused state to a confident state, it took around 3 years, from 15 to 18, and now 18 onwards, he is a fully confident person, and he is now having 5 to 6 junior naturalists under him. Now all these are the tourism by these boys. Now what they are giving me an information from the landscape. Sir, आज हमने ये देखा, कल हमने ये देखा, परसों हमने ये देखा. And all these informations are coming through social media like WhatsApp and other platforms to me. And we were first lucky team to report the wild chick sighted in 2018 and 2019. So this was like at that time Chief Wildlife Warden G.B. Reddy Sahab also uploaded for our efforts. And our approach reach up to like ground staff, and Forest Department started recognizing our work. That earlier time they used to say like कि आप लोग आते हो घूमते हो पर हमें समझ में नहीं आ रहा आप कर क्या रहे हो. So हमने बोला कि sir, you just give us an opportunity to mingle with them, and when we will be completely accepted by them, then you will see the result. So this community, this Great Indian Bustard Community Conservation Project is nothing. It's a open concept project where nobody is funding. So far I have not received any funding, and I am doing it as an honorary capacity. I am not doing as a full time. So there is a team, and team is working, and I am just coordinating in between my free time to this team. So community wildlife volunteers is like in the last stage is like 100 plus. Then we are having special GIB community volunteers is around 15 to 20, sometime plus, sometime minus, but we are not paying anything. So if somebody is interested, they can join us. And if they are joining us, we are having some kind of like a dialogue with them. and some type of open rule book is with us, and we used to monitor their activity. We used to ask them through the phone calls, and if somebody is like birder used to visit in any particular area, we are giving his contact to the birder and to the our community network. So some kind of incentive, some kind of half-day pay they can offer him. So then we are having two field coordinators. One is in the Pokhran side, another in the Samsudarshi side. Then myself here as an honorary advisor, I am just doing nothing. I am just working as a catalyst in between these. And there is one team leader, and team leader is Dr. Mamta Rawat. And this project is conceptualized in an open concept under a small grassroots level NGO, which is like the ERDS Foundation, named as Ecology, Rural Development and Sustainability Foundation, basically working purely in Jaisalmer and at a grassroots level. Now I started again working, trying to give some kind of incentive to these boys, because I am a government servant and I don't have that much to offer something. So I started searching here and there how to help them. And सब तो साथ में जुड़ गए, कारवां तो बन गया, बट अब वो उस कारवां का मेंटेनेंस कैसे करें, how to keep the interest going on. So thanks to my good friend Dr. Dharmendra Kandal from Tigerwat, Ranthambore, he gave me contact with Binoculars for Charity, which is a Zurich, Sweden-based organization, and they are willing to support some interesting birding projects. So I contacted them. So Binoculars for Charity used to give used binoculars and new books. So binoculars are used and new books, and the optics of these Sweden-based or Leica and then these Carl Zeiss, Nikon and others, is not going to be like use करने से ज़्यादा खराब नहीं होता. So they service them and they used to send to the field projects, and their unit is 5 binoculars, 1 telescope and 5 books. So this unit I received, and I selected among these 25 who is the best person going to receive this. And I went up to, this is like Dr. Mamta Rawat, this is our coordinator Bhupendra Singh, and this is Radheshyam, myself. So I reach up to the ground by my personal capacity, and I hand over the product to them by hand. And all these volunteers are working in GIB landscape and helping. Our purpose is monitoring of GIB and other associated faunal elements. And with the help of these equipment, these volunteers, this is one telescope we received, and all these volunteers are now working. So here you can see on the link, the link directly goes up to the website, and our work has been mentioned there. So this is a small gift we received from Binocular for Charity, and all of them are like very happy to receive one gift of a fantastic binocular. And I must say that I am not having that quality of binocular which they have. This is Radheshyam Premani, and he has been given Leica binocular. So you just imagine the Leica binocular quality of the optics, and I am using still Olympus and Nikon. So now the result started coming. Radheshyam Premani is very active in his community, and he is a Vishnoi community person, and in Pokhran area, few villages are very much dominated by Vishnoi. So in this area, our work started very well. It's like percolated very well, and we received result very fast. So he reported 4 GIB in 1 year only, and all these 4 GIBs were reported to us, to our network, and our network responded to Forest Department, and Forest Department recovered all the bodies of these GIBs. And Wildlife Institute of India also took some samples, and they did genetic analysis of these bodies. And genetically, Jaisalmer population is having all the genes of Indian bustard population. So there is a great hope from this Great Indian Bustard Captive Breeding Project also. Now these are some of the posters, some of the cover of my reports, which is like in 2010, and then this is in 2018. This is a totally community supported project. And now in 2019, Dr. Dharmendra Kandal from Tigerwat gave me one opportunity that, Sumit, why don't you do something in a mass scale? So then I said that I don't have much funding with me. I can do Kar Seva, but I don't have anything else from my side. Then he managed one small grant for this GIB project, and he gave us 5 lakh rupees. And this 5 lakh rupees were given to a team of 4 persons, and all these 4 persons, so I was a part of that committee, and we selected 15 schools in GIB ARC area. And out of these 15 schools, 5 or 6 schools are from Pokhran side, and then 11 or 10 schools are from Shamsudasi side, and one school is in the Jaisalmer side. So we organized one event, and around 30 to 40,000 rupees articles were given to the school. So few articles like related to kids, few articles related to school office, and all these schools are remotely located in Jaisalmer. So Forest Department came forward, and here you can see DFO Kapilji is the current DFO. This is in the last August. So DFO Kapil is here, Mr. Kapil is here, and this lady and this turban person is Sarpanch of that area, and we organized one event. You can say a small kind of a gala event, and so these are the articles we gave to the school out of that 5 lakh rupees grant, and in a small gathering. And here you can see Mal Singh Ji Jamda. He is very active in GIB conservation area in Shamsudasi side. So he also joined us, and he, myself, and 2 more were part of that committee to distribute these articles. Now, this is a recent project which was funded to Dr. Mamta Rawat for the current concept which we are working right now. And in this, we started building our network very strongly. And another objective we added in our network is like anti-poaching activity. So our target is very big. The target is like zero poaching in GIB landscape. And that zero poaching word is very, you can say like very interesting to us. But this is the toughest challenge to have zero poaching, because our target species is GIB, and it is eating all the type of, from snake to locust. So any wildlife which is listed in Wildlife Protection Act is in our radar, and we are trying our best to stop this type of poaching. So within last two years, we were with the help of this network, we were able to register, or you can say like give a tip off to the Forest Department, to the Police Department, and more than 10 to 15 cases were registered, FIR lodged, and ACGM reached up to the ACGM court. And all these cases are from spiny-tailed lizard poaching to chestnut-bellied sandgrouse to grape francolin to chinkara. And Forest Department is doing best for GIB, but our target is GIB as a flagship species, and we are working on lesser known fauna also. So we used to organize small community gatherings, and a few more type of posters and designs were distributed. Then we started, since schools were in our network, we have gifted articles to 15 schools. So all these 15 schools are stepping stones for us to reach further in the villages. And now we are continuously going in the schools. We are continuously organizing our campaigns and dialects and the type of activities we are doing. So this is one of the village in the GIB, Khetulai in Jaisalmer. Such type of posters were designed, and the poster says that गोडाउन है हमारी शान, मारवाड़ की ये पहचान. So we are trying our best to to make some rhyming kind of dialogue where species can be added as a pride, and that pride is going to be with the villages, with the locals. So इसको हमें शान के रूप में देखना है, and we are doing our best to make it as a pride for that landscape. And people started working well. Even all the volunteers now, they are proudly saying that हमारे एरिया में गोडाउन रहता है, बाकी कहीं पे नहीं मिलता है, तो ये हमारी ड्यूटी है कि we have to save it. Now we started again working with local, you can say like a कहावत type का कुछ बनाया, and we started giving in a popular social media platform to them, and in Hindi as well as in the Rajasthani. So it says like ऊंचा ऊंचा धोरा अठे लांबो रेगिस्तान, कोसा कोस रूप कोनी तब तो राजस्थान, पोगड़ा और कैर अठे करे बॉम्ब पर राज, गोडाउन जोड़ा अठे मरुदर राता. So we used various type of communication skills to reach up to the ground, and all these whatever photographs are coming, all of them are coming from outside the protected area. So GIB is roaming in a very large area, and we need a very big network to monitor it. Now, this is an interesting case study. I am telling you. This statue of Great Indian Bustard was established by Bombay Natural History Society in 2002. I was a part of that on-foot patrol from Bikaner to Jaisalmer, and this work was done by Dr. Asad Rahmani Saab, and I was at that time as a volunteer. Then during this work, I started looking for that कि हमने एक मंदिर में मूर्ति रखी थी, वो मंदिर में मूर्ति का स्टेटस क्या है. So I was lucky enough to reach up to this village through searching at various places in the Google and in the old field notebooks and searching from the old contacts के वो मंदिर कहाँ पे है जहाँ हमने गोडाउन का मूर्ति रखा. So villagers fondly accepted it, and it's around 20 years, 18 years. This statue is in a temple in Jaisalmer, village name is Sankla, and it's close to Mohangarh, and this temple is Hadbuji temple. So it's a local god, local deity, and people used to worship a lot. And this village is Rajput dominating village. So why I'm telling you the caste, you can say like a caste diversity of that landscape, because we need all the caste together. So I started dialect with them, and I now have a very good friendship with this boy, this person. And this is a temple, and you can see this statue is kept as a Nandi in a Shivji temple. So it's like a Lord Shiva temple, Nandi placed just in front of a statue, in front of a murti. Same way this godown is also placed. And this person told me that every year they are having around September, they are having one big fair. And during this big fair, people used to do overnight bhajan kirtan here. And all these garlands and other are kept around the neck of this statue also. So this took around 18 to 19 years of efforts, and people are accepting it. So it is not correct to say that communities are against the GIB. So I started working in this concept that communities are there, though you can say like in 1% or 2%, but we have to increase this percentage rather than we have to blame everything on these communities. Now I started working with my good friend Radheshyam to do something more religiously on this bird. And since Maharaj, Guru Jambeswar Maharaj is having a very much affinity with the wildlife, so we started placing the photo of GIB in few of the photos of Jamboji, and we started looking about this small kind of a social experiment, and we were very happy that community accepted it very well. And now Vishnoi community is with me and with the GIB. And now I am going to tell you a few more about this benefit of networking in GIB and other associated wildlife conservation in GIB Arc landscape. This photograph is a part of a spy kind of activity by one of our activists, one of our volunteers, and he shoot it through the mobile in the pocket. And you can see this lady is having Varanus, and this Varanus is roasted, and you can see these are hemipenis outside the body. So this Varanus has been, like, it was roasted in the chula, and this boy is there, and she is having a knife, and they are going to eat it. And this is a Hatta Jodi. So they are eating the lizard and selling this in a national and international market in the name of Hatta Jodi. And you all are aware about the Hatta Jodi since last 2-3 years. Wildlife Trust of India and WCCB Delhi are doing excellent work. So this is also supplied from this area, and we are working very hard to reach up to this type of activity. Now, this is a very recent case. During the lockdown, all the locals or tribals or marginal communities or labor communities are free. They are not having any work. And this time is like a crucial for wildlife in entire India. And our network is very active. And we were able to pass the information to the forest department. And we were successful to crack some kind of cases. So our network is spreaded in well. And you can read some of the name of our volunteers, Radheshyam here. But we used to keep many of our workers undercover. We are not disclosing the name. This is up to the canal, so our network reach up to the canal also, Indira Gandhi Canal, beyond the canal. Various farmers are along with us and they are reporting something ill activity is going on. If you can do, you just do it. We are ready to help you. Now this is like one held for Chinkara poaching, 4 escape. This is a recent case where we were working with the forest department, with the local community since last 2.5 years to correct something. And we were having the first lead from this network was that they are behind the spiny-tailed lizard and they are killing this spiny-tailed lizard. So it was in 28 March 2019. One of my students was doing his MSc dissertation there. And at that time, Radheshyam Pemani and my students were also on the field. And they were part of the information passed to the forest department. So forest department nabbed these 3 persons. And we luckily able to identify these local person, and we tried to track the family of these local persons. So we used to contact the media and give various type of newspapers in news also in the newspaper about the myths, about the type of wildlife crime is going on in the area. And we reach up to the Wildlife the Crime Control Bureau Delhi, even Traffic Wildlife Trust of India, WWF India. So all the organizations are little bit of knowing about our activity, what we are doing in the landscape. And exactly 1.5 years, this is the current lockdown time. Through the help of these contacts of these persons, we were able to crack a biggest poaching gang in the Jaisalmer, where 4 persons were arrested, and the one who is that gang leader is known as Manohar and also known as Mania. And this Mania is one of the biggest poacher, and he claimed that he had killed from 2009 to 2020 1,000 plus chinkaras. So you just see the magnitude of chinkara, and chinkara is like a medium size of animal, and they are also killing various other animals too. So one of our contact and volunteer, Mukesh Vishnoi, reported this, and now we are very happy that Mukesh Vishnoi is still chasing this case, and he is one of the Gawah of this case, and he used to go all the courts, and we chased up to the ACJM and then this district court, and they were not given bail. So this is like my small experiments. And recently, Monga also covered this story in their online platform about this poaching case. And you can read about, this is like 14th April 2020 case only. And you can read the detail about the forest department statement and then tip off, and these all 4 were arrested. And you just see the weapon. Weapons are only dandas and axe. So here is the ACF and all the entire forest team. And these are the 4. And this person is the person who is the leader of this gang, Manohar or Mania. So there is a huge threat on GIB as well as other species. So our network, we are doing our best to help this, pass the information to the network and to the forest department also. And in the entire journey of my from 2006 to 2020, I can say like very much thankful to a very loosely built organization, Ecology Rural Development Sustainability Foundation. Then I time to time received 2 grants from Oriental Bird Club. And thank you very much, Tiger Watch and Dr. Dharmendra Kandal, for giving us an opportunity to give something to the 15 schools. And thank you, Mal Singh Jamda of Godown Conservation Society, who is working very well in some part of Jaisalmer, some Sudhasri part of Jaisalmer, and State Forest Department for accepting kind of a work we are doing. And now we are having a very good rapport with the Forest Department, and they are supporting our initiative well. So now I am open to discussion.
Yeah, so thank you, Sumit, for a very, very enlightening, I think, session. I think it's a wonderful work. And as you would know, in a country like India with 1.25 billion people, I mean, no species can survive unless the community, starts safeguarding them, starts taking pride in the biodiversity around us, and then start protecting them as well. Otherwise, the future of biodiversity in a country of 1.25 billion is absolutely bleak anyway. And of course, the fact that I was just seeing on the trend line that you have projected.
Yes.
Surprisingly, the decline is very, very serious with two things that I noticed. One is the catastrophic decline of the vultures, which meant that the dogs and the other population has increased in the same landscape. And you brought out one point over there. How dogs are harming possibly the nesting of the bustards. The second thing I noticed was also the decline was related to the economic progress of the country. So right from early 90s, when the economic progress of the country has grown, there has been a corresponding decline in the vulture population as well, to the extent that the government realized, and by 2013 they declared it as critically endangered. So it just gives a couple of thoughts that how the decline of vultures have created an ecosystem where dogs are thriving, and which is leading to the vultures also falling prey to those dogs. And secondly, I think the economic progress being inversely proportional to the conservation of the vultures means that the habitats are coming increasingly under more threat. And I think there's a very valid question that you made, and I have my friend Group Captain Puneet Mehta also over here. He was posted in Nalia. I mean, he was the station commander there, and he was also working very closely with the Nalia grasslands, and much of that is actually part of the Air Force station as well. And of course, he also, being in the Air Force, he was able to use the official machinery to kind of, do a survey of the Great Indian Bustard. So again, I think he, and in some of the conversations that I had with him, he mentioned that how the transmission lines are playing a havoc. Okay, so are there any, so before I hand over the mic to Puneet, I just want to ask you, are there any plans to basically, ensure that the, kind of uplift of the power from the solar panels over there is taken underground rather than through the transmission lines, which are obviously harmful to the Indian bustards?
So what I can say, like from my experience, I can say I am not an authority of from this side and that side. And there is a huge pressure on the landscape to generate electricity. And earlier it was a part of from the this wind energy. And now since 2012 onwards, there is a one order passed by state government that no new windmill is going to be in the GIB landscape. So from that 2012 onwards, there is no new GIB this windmill project sanctioned. But the old sanctioned projects are still commissioned there, and you can still find one or two windmill is construction is going on and placing the fence and everything is going on. But no new windmill is coming, and no new sanction is coming. The second thing is that after 2014-15 onwards, there is a huge sanction of solar power, because earlier it was admitted or assumed that the GIB is having a threat from the fans and blades and sound of this windmill. So windmill projects were stopped, and the new sanctions were given to the solar power companies. And solar power companies are coming in a large number, and there is no direct threat from solar this park. But the problem starts with the you can say like a spider web kind of transmission lines, and transmission line is either coming from windmill or coming from solar plant, and these transmission lines are having a heavy load. It is not like a load which we are having in our houses like 250 or 300 watt load. So that load is very high, and due to this and the technical problem, you must be aware about the frontal vision and that side vision of the bird. So this bird is not having a frontal vision, so it can't see straight in the front direction. So it used to see in the left and right direction more than the front direction, and it used to take height up to 150 or 200 feet only. and this is a particular height where all the transmission lines are placed. So it is not able to recognize the gap in between the lines, and all these four GIB deaths were reported just below the transmission line. So in last 3-4 years, Wildlife Institute of India done a commendable work to raise this issue up to the national and judicial platform, and due to this, they also mapped certain areas. So we are treating that area as a critical migratory path or the daily movement path of GIB. So WII and other organizations involved in this research, they gave suggestion that certain part of these electricity lines should be underground, if possible underground. If not possible, then they have to put some bird diverters. So bird diverters is again a kind of a reflector which is going to reflect, but still we are not having any study in India on Great Indian Bustard about the role of bird diverters and the mortality data. Now, luckily we are not having any death since last 1.5 years, and this is, you can say, like only hardly 20 to 30 bird diverters are placed as an experimental site in one or two in between the two pylons in Ketolai region of Jaisalmer, and Wildlife Institute of India, Forest Department, and many other organizations are regularly monitoring that electricity line to see the mortality rate. So the biggest problem is transmission lines. Another problem is the increasing number of dogs. Though we are always saying the dogs, but there is an equal number of quantum of problem is from wild boar population. So over the years, the agricultural activities are increased in the landscape due to the canal irrigation. Various type of species invaded into the desert, and this constant availability of water in various water holes in desert region gave an ample opportunity to breed, successfully raise the piglets and the dog puppies and other animals, and even the nilgai, though nilgai is not having a direct threat with this GIB, but wild boar and dogs are treated as second largest threat to GIB, especially at the breeding sites and up to the chicks. So because chicks can't fly up to certain months, and they used to chase and kill it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Puneet, you want to add something to this based on your experience of the transmission lines in Nalia?
Yeah, thank you, KB, and Dr. Sumit, thank you so much. And
thank you.
My experience is slightly, it may be a bit different. I'm not a expert in this. I took a lot of guidance from Mr. Devesh Gadvi. He's also onto this program. But what I felt is that the transmission line was a danger. I think a lot of projects, I was involved in the Kutch area only, and since it was in the Kutch area, they did a lot of work of putting the transmission line down underground. And I think it did make make a difference. I'm not sure how much of those lines have gone down, but the approval had come somewhere around last year that they're going to put the transmission lines into the ground.
Puneet, can I stop here? Dr. Devesh Gadvi is also here in the participant, and he can update the latest information from Kutch Nalia area, because he is
Doctor? Okay, Dr. Gadvi, 1 second.
Yeah.
I'll unmute you. Yeah.
Dr. Gadvi is here.
So the interesting thing what I found, what you brought out is like, I thought that, the dogs and all, I was told, and Dr. Gadvi also guided me. I did meet Dr. Sudhita Datta and Dr. Rahmani also. I had the opportunity to meet them. I interacted with them. The thing that came out was, while it was brought out that the dogs...
One moment, Puneet. I think I've muted everybody. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
That creates... give me a minute, please. I think just some logistics of managing. Where's me now? Yeah, I'll just unmute you. Sorry. Yeah, Puneet, please.
Okay, thank you. While dogs were an issue, so since where I was there, the Great Indian Bustard Sanctuary is right next door. So I did have a experience of going there, and what I found was, and we did an exercise along with Dr. Gadvi in the FO station, where we found that if I grew the grass back, like you brought out, the grass is up to the eye level. If you grew the grass back, the bustard came back.
Yeah,
it came back
that
to
is
the environment. But the reason why the grass is not growing and why the dogs were getting more, getting an opportunity to go for the bird and destroy the egg or whatever is there, is probably because of the excessive grazing that the cattle took place in these open grasslands. And that what happened was the grass became small. And because the grass became small, the bustard by design, as you brought out, if it is below the eye level, if the grass not there, I think that is one of the reasons why it moved out. And it is searched for that arc area. Maybe it may not be related to just to the dogs. I think the cattle that is there in the villages is also a large part towards the grassland getting destroyed, and it not growing to a height where it can reach around 1.5 2 feet. So this program, when we did in the Air Force Station also, it is absolutely plain grassland, because there we cut the grass to prevent birds. And now when I took an opportunity and guidance from him, we realized that if we grew the grass to around 1.5 feet 2 feet and let it grow to its natural height, the whole environment changed. I had a problem with greater shortwood larks in the base, and because the grass grew up, the birds went away. The small birds went away. The bustard became more common into the base. Like in my around 2 years, I must have had anything in excess of 100-120 sightings. I was seeing nearly every week. I was seeing at least 3-4 at an average in the base. And I think the grass growth was one of the main reasons. We also had, like you brought out earlier also, I managed to see the lesser florican right in the middle of the base. I saw the Stoliska bush chat. They all came back the moment the grass came up. So one way to prevent the dog from, becoming an issue is maybe a fence that prevents the dogs from coming. It's just an idea.
Yeah.
Because and the grass can grow and the cattle can be stopped. So probably that is one place where we can look at. I also want to bring out like the high tension cable, why it scared us. I did have an aircraft to fly in, and I have an opportunity which I shared with Divesh, Dr. Divesh. And, I flew nearly 20 kilometers with a Great Indian Bustard in air. And he was below me. And he flew constantly from one place to another place. It was one place where we knew he was there, and a second place where he suspected he could be there. And this flight of around nearly 25 minutes is where I followed him, and he actually flew non-stop. I thought it was such a big bird. It can't fly for such long distance. That's what I made to believe. And there are so many high tension cables and the windmills over there. But he just flew and flew, and he flew continuously. And I just followed him for nearly 25 minutes, and he's flown one stretch at one go. So if he can't see, at least he was aware, because he never went into any dangerous high tension cable or any of the, those windmills. So yeah, I think we did have a case where, a young baby had gone into, after it was tagged, it had gone into the high tension cable and died over there.
Last, I think 2 months, one more died due to that stuck in the wind pipe.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were tracking it with the tags that were there, and we found that it had gone into a cable. And where we suspected where the small youngster had gone, actually was not a high tension cable, it was a normal cable. It was not a, that HT cable, it was a normal power line in which he had gone into, finally when it was found. So,
Dr. Gadvi, you're there on the, Dr. Gadvi.
I think Dr. Gadvi can.
Yeah, I was just,
he can act.
First and foremost, I would like to congratulate all of you, the organization and Dr. Sumit for giving a wonderful presentation, and to the organizers for arranging a talk on Great Indian Bustard, which is normally a neglected species or lesser known species for a prolonged period. Now there are a lot of people who are involved in conservation of GIB, or at least in the awareness program of the bustard conservation. I agree with Dr. Dhukia and Mr. Puneet both. But before I say anything, I must mention that there were 3 chicks in the year 2016 in Gujarat, and all of them could survive. That's because of the efforts by Mr. Puneet Mehta and his team and the entire Air Force. And while going through the presentation of Dr. Dhukia, I could see that same is happening in case of Rajasthan, where a very large chunk of habitat is available with the defense.
Yes.
And I think this is where we need to have their cooperation for the conservation of the species for long term. In regards to the power lines, they are still there. Nothing has been done so far, so many meetings and commitments by various committees. But unfortunately, all the lines are still standing tall. And as you all know, that Gujarat has lost all the males. So now what we have is about 4 to 5 females. All the of them have died just in the 3 years. The male has disappeared and 2 females, one collided with the power line, other died due to the calotis, unlucky fellow. But yes, power line is a major concern. I also agree that the dogs are playing a very tricky thing because it is somewhere restricting the recruitment rate, which is very crucial for the survival of the population. And if we look at the data of Wildlife Institute of India, then there are about 18 Great Indian bustards dying in Thar landscape per year.
Per year, yes.
If we are not seeing any mortality, then there is a possibility that the mortality is still there, but we are not able to detect it.
Detection rate is very low.
Unless we have power lines in the sky, all the efforts on the ground may fail. This is I'm telling on basis of my experience of 10 years. We have worked a lot on the ground, but until and unless the power lines are there or they are not made underground, the future of the bustard is very risky. The community involvement, wonderful work done by Dr. Dhukia is very crucial, because until and unless you have support of the local community, it's impossible to save the species on such a large landscape. And in regards to grazing, I would partially agree with Mr. Puneet. Grazing is very much important post the breeding season. So during the breeding season, there shouldn't be any grazing, but once the breeding season is over, in winter there can be, or whenever the non-breeding activities are there, grazing can be allowed, or grass can be harvested and can be given away to the community, because this helps in maintaining the density and height of the grass, which is very crucial. Earlier, we used to have lots of wild ungulates. Now it's not the case. If you look at the data shared by Dr. Dhukia, 1,000 Jinkara hunting is unbelievable. And it's really commendable work that such team has been caught by the efforts of the local volunteers. So there are so many challenges in regards to the bustard conservation. And I think the biggest challenge is to focus only on one threat. That's the biggest risky thing. We have to focus on all the threats. We have to work on all the threats. Then only we'll be able to save the species, be it power line, be it over or uncontrolled grazing, be it dogs or whatever. We have to work on all the aspects, and then only we'll be able to save the species. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gadhvi. I think that was wonderful, kind of a perspective that you provided. There are a couple of questions. I'll just try and paraphrase those questions and put it across just for the sake of, avoiding repetition.
Yes,
one is, of course, I think Dr. Gadhvi has said about Gujarat, and of course, Sumit, you've given a very good, understanding of how the gibbs, are thriving or stand in the state of Rajasthan. How about Maharashtra? Of course, I remember about 12 years back, I took an overnight train from Bombay, went to Sholapur to Nanaj to actually see the birds, and it was just post the breeding time as well. So there are, of course, possibly a couple of, dozen species over there. So how do you see maybe Dr. Gadhvi, you could also throw light on this. How do you see the bustards, kind of flourishing in Maharashtra or in parts of Andhra Pradesh, now Telangana and Karnataka? So what's your assessment of those habitats?
So if I have to say, then this is the biggest challenge to give numbers. And numbers are authorities are allowed to give the numbers. So I am just quoting one of the last assessment done by Wildlife Institute of India. Though various volunteers were participated from my team also in all the assessments done by Wildlife Institute of India from 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. So all the 5 years, various volunteers participated in the mammoth exercise done by Dr. Sudipto Datta and the team. And the last result they released in September 2018, and that was 150 individuals and it is there in IUCN also. You can get it from the IUCN last state assessment in October 2018, where they are saying that minimum 50 individuals, adult individuals, to maximum 249 individuals. So in between these, you can just take a mean, so that the mean comes around 150 to 170 individuals. And in that 150 individuals, they surprisingly again gave a small statistic on the state-wise data, and that was like around 122 adult GIB in Rajasthan, and rest 28 are in Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, then this Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. So recently, last 6 months back, I received one information that one bird was sighted in Nanad. So sighting of one bird after many months or like a few years is a news in the local media. And this is a very large bird, and the forest department is always vigilant and vigil to keep an eye on the landscape where they used to be found. So there is very less, I can say, like very less sightings are in the other part of the India. Just few, like Gadvi Sahab already told, that few individuals are there in the Gujarat, and interestingly, all these are females. So the hope is again from the Rajasthan, where we are having very good number of males, and all the displaying males are in the breeding stage. And last year, around that state national government as well as the state government and Wildlife Institute of India is running one very long plan, captive breeding plan, and in that they are picking the wild eggs, few of the wild eggs from the wild eggs laid by these individuals, and 8 eggs were hatched, reached up to this current. The adult is around 1 year of age, 1 and some months of the age, and the youngest one was just born on 2nd April in 2020 and named as a Corona. So they are doing excellent, and 8 in the last year, 1 in this current breeding season. So, and it's all breeding is up to the disturbance level as well as the amount of food available. So luckily, we were very lucky that last year the huge amount of locust swarms invaded in the desert part, and our vigilant team of the volunteers rang the bell up to the DM level, district magistrate level, that please don't spray pesticide in the GIB arc landscape. Then we also gave certain locations that please don't spray, because at that time in the June and July when the locust swarm came, and the males and the females were in the breeding activity, males were displaying, females were surrounding the males, and then we raised one very fast online camp. It's a kind of a email campaign to all the who's who of GIB conservation journey, from Wildlife Institute of India director to some officers in the MOEF, and even I think Gadvi Sahab and Kedar Gore Sahab, and also they were all involved in that campaign. And we were able to get orders issued by Wildlife Institute of India director, then central government, then state government, and forest department was on foot along with a locust control team to identify area and please don't spray. So my concern is here that the amount of the locust added into the protein diet of the GIB, and this year we were able to pick one egg early in the March, and the chick hatched in the April only. So there is no fixed breeding season. We used to see that breeding season earlier used to be reported during the monsoon time. Now we are having record from December to January to March to April to September to October. Every like 1 or 2 months, you just left 1 or 2 months. Down the year, you can see like sometime depending upon the local weather and the amount of food they are having during the non-breeding season is promoting them to breed. So we are hoping that this year again we are going to have good number of chicks.
Wonderful. Dr. Gadvi, would you know what is the status of Indian bustard in Maharashtra, Telangana, and Karnataka? I mean, of course, we know the numbers are down, but any assessment of the numbers? Because in 2007 in Nanad, I saw about a dozen bustards. So how is it now, Dr. Gadvi? If you have any idea?
I think 2007. That's a quite old time now, and that used to be the golden era. And I agree with you. There are records of so many bustards. I mean, if you look at the literature review, then there is a report which says that there were 400 bustard at a place. There is a question on this this publication by Tayyabji in 1923 from Maharashtra. But the latest publication, or the last publication, was by Dr. Bilal Habib from Wildlife Institute of India, which says that there was no sighting of the bustard during the survey, but they believed that there were few individuals, and as per the analysis, there are about 6 to 8 individuals surviving in entire Maharashtra. Possibly they are sharing the population with Karnataka and some of the other region. Same is the case with Karnataka, where there are about, I think Dr. Samad Katur is the right person to, or Dr. Sutirtha Datta is the right person to comment on it. But I think there are around 5 to 6 birds there, and same number is there in Andhra Pradesh, possibly lower than Karnataka. From Madhya Pradesh, they have been extinct since the year 2011, if I'm not wrong. But here I would like to add the point that now with this new conservation breeding center, every state is pushing that we would like to have similar centers in our area, or we would like to have more birds, to release those birds here. But the number of bustards in any state is not important. The important is conservation of the landscape, the GIB landscape, because even if the conservation breeding center succeed, then in future you will have to have habitat, safe habitat, free from power lines, to release those captive bred birds back into the wild. And I think that is the responsibility on our shoulder, because we are I would say, the green waters of India. And we will have to think about it, that until and unless we start working on conservation of the landscape now, then possibly we won't be able to, reintroduce or release those captive bird bred back into the wild. So more than the number of birds, it's important to save whatever habitat you have. And I agree that we have lost all the males, mainly because of the power lines. We have just 4 to 5 females. But though I'm from Gujarat, I would say that if Gujarat is not putting its power line underground, no other state should give their male to the state, because it's not about state. Bustard is of India, and we should be thinking more about the species than the individual boundaries. Thank you.
Understood.
I just add one more thing, that whatever my efforts I am doing outside the landscape, outside the protected area. And this is a landscape where we are having a hope, and this entire concept is in situ conservation concept. So I am targeting up to 25 years further in the plan, and slowly, like it's a kind of a slug pace, I am moving ahead, and one by one I am reaching up to innovative ideas. And in a short span, I will also share many ideas with all of you to a kind of a crowdfunding or a kind of a small funding to, like, what initiatives I am doing is for the landscape and for the birds and for the volunteers. So this is a platform where we are working for 25 years ahead to make a habitat, at least whatever is available right now, it should be available up to 25 years in the time. So when forest department or the state, this central government is going to release the birds, where will be the habitat? So habitat will be important part even after the 25 years passed from this date.
Right. So thank you so much, Dr. Sumeet, and of course, Dr. Gadgvi also adding your perspectives. We are running short of time. Actually, we've really overshot our time, but I think it's been one of the great discussions. And I think for some reason, while Dr. Gadgvi mentioned that it may not be a species which comes to mind very easily, but increasingly, I think there is a pride in the fact that Indian bustard is something which is found in India. Though there are now reports from parts of Pakistan as well, but I think this is one species which is Indian species, Indian subcontinental endemic, and Rajasthan, of course, is the center of any conservation efforts to ensure that this species will thrive for another 25, 30 years, 50 years, and hopefully for perpetuity, I think, But I think one thing which is very, very important that I think that emerges very clearly is the fact that, the future of the species is very uncertain unless the communities can be brought into the fold, unless the government, unless the industry, unless the policy makers think or have at least the survival of the Indian bustard into the planning for anything that goes on, whether it be urban planning, whether it be industrial planning, whether it be planning for windmills or solar powers. I know that solar power in India is now actually reaching such low price points that it's becoming ubiquitous across the country. And Jodhpur and Jaisalmer, that's the place where the radiation intensity is the highest in any part of the country. So you can imagine the kind of pressure which is there from solar power producers to set up their plants in this particular part of the country, which is also very, very critical from a bustard conservation point of view. So Dr. Sumit, another point that I picked up was the fact that you're doing this completely voluntarily. You've created a network of volunteers. And of course, if you see the larger group over here, and I think almost 70 of us started, we still about 55 of us. All of us are actually, kind of enthusiasts as well. So we would like to, take this opportunity to extend our support in any way we can to your initiatives. And of course, you spoke about, whether it's a crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, or whether it is, reaching out to some of the guides that you've trained, so that the bird watchers, when they go there, they kind of employ those guides. So that's the kind of a support that we can provide to the volunteers. And of course, now we have, very large social media platform. There are people who are genuinely interested in supporting, going beyond the hobby of just watching birds to actually supporting, wonderful initiatives and efforts of people like you. Please feel free to, reach out to any one of us, whenever you can, and then of course, we'll find a way to see how we can involve the larger bird watching community towards, supporting you as well, or any such initiatives. So I think we're running short of time. There are a few questions which are more specific. I think you may address them directly to Dr. Sumit as well. Otherwise, thank you everyone who joined this evening. I think it's been one of the most wonderful sessions that we've had, particularly for a species, that's really, I think, will possibly be the first species that will go extinct post-independence, a bird species.
Yes, okay. And that will be the biggest shame for all of us.
Yeah, so that will really be the saddest.
And we have to accept it. Otherwise, like, it's going to become a problem for us. What we are going to say in the future generation, sir, aap kar kya rahe the? So whatever we are doing is we are doing our best to pay the landscape, pay the species. At least we have to do something rather than like just watching, and the species is at a remote corner where many of us even still not able to reach.
Yeah. So just a wake up call that Indian bustard will be the first species that will actually go extinct from India post-independence. There is pink-headed duck which has not been seen from pre-independence days, but post-independent India, I think this will be the first big species which is actually at the threshold of extinction. Okay, so I think that should be a wake-up call for all of us to support initiatives like yours. And Dr. Sumit, more power to you, and please feel free to reach out to us or whatever support we can. I think we have a big bird watching community across the country now, and I'm sure most of us will, be very happy to extend the support. So thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, everyone, and a good week ahead.
Thank you, everyone. And share my email ID to this link or in a Facebook page. So all the questions which I am not able to read right now, I will be very happy to give answers.
I will do that. Thank you so much. I will do that. Yeah, I'll share the video as well so that people can, relook at this session whenever they feel like in leisure, and the others who could not join us as well. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening, everyone.